Another thing that changed my life, bad segue, after I left the People Show, I decided I wanted to go to film school. So I never learned my lesson about applying to colleges. And the National Film School had just opened and was turning out some really interesting filmmakers at that time. And so I applied. I'd done 10 years with the People Show. I applied to the National Film School and got an interview, and I had a totally disastrous interview where it seemed like the fact that I had come from a performance art background and I was applying to do film, seemed to create a certain amount of confusion among the people who interviewed me, who were the kind of cream of the British film industry at that time. I had a terrible interview. I lost my temper. Always not a good thing. As I walked out, I told my class that, they said very sarcastically, so if you don't get into film school, what will you do? And I went, I'll make a film. And then this famous cinematographer said, but you've just told us you don't even know how to use a 16mm camera. And I went, it can't be that difficult. And that was my exit line. Totally my exit line, because I didn't get in. The kind of revenge is a dish served best cold is that I now teach at the National Film School. And I always tell the students, by the way, I'm a failed applicant. But I also get it with academic institutions sometimes. They're looking for something. I wasn't it. And actually, it was the best thing that happened to me, because I did go and make a film. And I learned how to edit and how to use a 16mm camera. And I actually probably did more in a year than I would have done in the 3 years there. And I may have become bored with their rather rigid idea of this is a director, this is a sound guy, or whatever. So anyway, I made a film for television. That was my kind of entree into the world. And then I started writing a feature script, which proved to be very difficult to get finance. And it was picked up at one time by an American studio, and then they sort of went bust and it got dropped. And so I was teaching. And then somebody picked up on it again, and I got a phone call saying, oh, there's a company in LA that like your script, and you should really come over, and because you could better if you talk to them rather than try and explain it. And so I had a producer, and he said, okay, we'll pay you a budget airfare, and I'll give you like $500 expenses or something to stay there for 2 weeks, and we'll book you into a hotel. So the production company, they were called Atlantic Releasing, and they were kind of hot indie. They were doing a lot of indie movies at the time, quite successfully. And their address was Sunset Boulevard, which immediately I thought was romantic. And so the secretary of the producer said, I'm going to book you into a hotel on Sunset Boulevard. And I went, excellent. So I flew in budget. I checked into the Holiday Inn on Sunset Boulevard. And I thought it's kind of odd because it looks like a water tower and there's a freeway underneath it, It's not how I imagined Sunset Boulevard, but, what do I know? I've never been to LA before, so, whatever. So jet lagged, I went to bed, woke up at like 5 in the morning, watched some TV, thought it was all pretty bizarre, went and had breakfast. There was just me and one other person in the Holiday Inn breakfast bar, and then a Hispanic waitress, and she went, hi, and I spoke, and she went, oh, you're English? And I went, yeah. She said, what do you do? And I said, which was kind of presumptuous. I said, I'm a filmmaker. And she said really loudly, a filmmaker? And I went, yeah. And she went, Dolores! And then this girl came out of the kitchen. She was kind of attractive, big Hispanic girl. She said, Dolores wants to be an actress. And I went, oh, that's great. He's a film director. And I went, well, not sort of, I thought, wow, this is such a strange town. So then I knew my meeting was at like 12 o'clock, and it was very early. So I thought, you know what, I'd love to get to know the town, and I'm a walker. So I spent a lot of time in New York, and I would walk up and down New York, Loved it. And I had my camera with me. So I thought, you know what, I've got like 2.5 hours. I'm going to walk to the venue. So, and I had no money, so I hadn't rented a car. So I kind of get dressed, and I bought this kind of what I thought was a really cool suit, but it was kind of green and white striped. And I got it in Topshop or whatever the equivalent was, but it was cool, For London, it was cool. In LA, it was just like, I was getting some weird looks, I have to say.
like somebody said, hey, you still got your pajamas on? And I went, that's very funny, thank you. So I kind of go, okay, I'm ready. I'm going to walk down Sunset Boulevard to my meeting. So I step out of the lobby, and there's a Filipino doorman, and I go, hi. He said, get your car for you, sir? And I went, no, I don't have a car. And he said, a cab? I went, no, I'm fine. I said, I've got a meeting at the 5000 building on Sunset. Can you point me in the right direction? And he went, it's a long way. And I went, it's okay. I've got plenty of time. He said, I said, which direction? And he went, that way. You know, I went, okay. So to get even to Sunset Boulevard, I had to somehow get across the freeway, which took a while. No, I didn't have to get across the freeway. It was a very busy intersection that butted onto the freeway. Anyway, I finally got across the road, had my bag, my camera. Beautiful day, and although it was getting hot, and I set off in that direction. So off I go. And the first bit is like the really beautiful gardens and flowers, and I take a few photographs, and, you know, it's really interesting. And then quite quickly, I would say within a couple of 100 yards, and it's quite curvy, that part of Sunset, I go around a corner, and suddenly there is no sidewalk. There's just 3 lanes of traffic on either side of that part of Sunset. And to proceed, you have to basically walk across someone's garden. I thought it's a bit odd, you know, whatever. So I walk across the gardens. I mean, I'm prepared to say, sorry, I'm walking across your garden because there's no sidewalk, you know, but no one's there. It's LA. There's no one seems to be in any of the houses. There's a lot of Hispanic gardeners everywhere and trucks. So I get round that particular bend, and then the sidewalk comes back again, but it's pretty... It doesn't look like people walk on it very often, you know. Anyway, I walk on it. This part of Sunset's really just like windy, hilly, windy. So I proceed. Very quickly, I get round another corner, no sidewalk again. And at that point, I'm thinking, you know, it's like, at what point are you committed? You know, I thought, it's an adventure. I have plenty of time. I have at least another 2 hours. I'm fine. You know, I keep walking. The posh houses and gardens seem to suddenly peter out. And so we're now I turn another corner, and it's this weird section of Sunset there. There are houses on the other side, but there are these kind of quite steep banks with really dirty kind of ivy and sort of like moist mud and things people have thrown out of windows like condoms, I think, and tin cans. It's not very nice. It really isn't. And there is no sidewalk. And not only that, they're very steep sides, so there's no houses anymore. There's no gardens. So it's like, I'm looking, I kind of go, okay, that's quite a long way around to the next bend. We're talking about maybe 150, 200 yards. I'm not an athlete. And there's a red light here, and I kind of go, okay. I wait for a while. It's quite a long red light. I kind of run. Should be okay. So I wait for the next red light, and then I go, it's like starting pistol. I lickety-split, I take off, running with my bag and my camera, and I'm now sweating a lot because it's now got much hotter. And I make it almost to the final corner, and then I hear the red light change, and you hear that. I look round, and it's like that scene from North by Northwest. These fucking cars are coming at me, right? And I'm right on the edge of the slow lane, and just the steep, nasty ivy bank is onto my right. And I'm looking, and the last minute I look round, and I kind of go, holy fuck, there's a Mexican truck, a gardening truck, coming straight at me with the handles of one of those, like, mowing machines or something, you know, sticking out of the side at head height, my head again, you know. And I think that's a decapitating moment, you know, because I'm basically in the lane. So it's like, again, a very quick calculation about life and death, and the answer is hurl yourself into the shit, you know. So I do. I dive into the ivy, and it is as disgusting as I anticipated it would be. And I'm lying there, and the traffic's going past, and I swear on my heart, I saw Warren Beatty drive past in an open-top Mercedes. And I was like, wow, Hollywood. I'm going to die on my first day, and there's Warren Beatty, you know. I guess there's a poetry to that, you know. So I pick myself up, and it's not so much dust myself or smear myself off. I now look like shit. I have mud all over my suit. I'm sweating like a pig. My shirt has now got 2 large damp patches that I've just met in the middle from my armpits, and I think this is not how I planned it. And onwards, you know. So I get back on the road, and it's a quiet red light moment, and then in the distance I see a taxi approaching. So I just do the desperate thing. I stand in the middle of Sunset Boulevard and I do this. And she, the taxi driver, stops. And she goes, "You're crazy. That's illegal." I went, "I know, I'm desperate." She's, "Get in quickly." So I get in. "Where are you going?" And I say, "The 5,000 building." Or is it the 9,000? She goes, "That's a long way." I went, "Really?" What the secretary had not told me was that Sunset Boulevard is actually 27 miles long, which is, as a fact, would have been useful to me on my first day when I decided to walk it. So we get in the back, and eventually we arrive at the building, which is one of the few skyscrapery buildings on Sunset, or was then. And I'm now early, ironically, and but I need to clean up. Anyway, I look at her like I would marry her. I would do anything. You know, she saved my life. She said, I said, "How much?" And she said, you know, let's call it $6 or something. I'm making this up, but it was something like that. So I hand her what I think is a $10 bill. I go, "Keep the change." She just smiles at me and go, "Ah, honey." And she hands me back 94, whatever it is, $93. I'd given a $100 bill. That's my complete naivety of the American way. And I go into the building. There is a sushi bar in the ground floor. So I kind of go, "I'll go and use the toilet." So I get into the toilet, at which point I scare myself by looking in the mirror and kind of go, "Wow, going in for your first big job interview. You look really scary. I'm a little bit burned, I'm covered in sweat, and just shit, basically, you know." And so I do the best, you know, you get the towels, you scrub up a bit, you know, and I thought maybe the best thing is to make it one tone, the shirt. You know, at least it's consistent. And I get most of the mud off. I splash my face and do a bit of, you know, hair frizz and all the rest of it. I'm looking much and say, okay, well, it's about now, I guess, you know. So take a breath, get myself back together again. So I go into the lobby, and a very overweight guy who's on the lobby, you know, it just looks like he's not moved there since birth. And I say, he said, "Can I help you?" And I go, "Yes, I'm Atlantic releasing." And he goes, "That's, well, let's say 2317. I said, "What, is that the 23rd floor?" He said, "Yes, 2317. Okay. So I go to the elevator, I get in, I press 23, I go up. And I'm now doing that thing of like rehearsing my entrance. Hi, I'm Mike, I'm here for a meeting with Bill Tennant, yeah, from London, yeah, filmmaker, yeah, director, yeah, wannabe, so I go, try it, Hark, I Hear a Cannon Roar, try that one, yeah, So I kind of, and I get to the door, and I knock on the door, and as I knock on the door starts kind of already half opens, and I look down, and you know where the lock is? There's just a hole in the door. There's no lock. I thought, this is very weird. So I knock again, hello, and I push the door open, and it sort of goes, and it's a completely empty space with kind of patches on the wall where posters have been, and terminals hanging down where computers have been, and a kind of slightly stained carpet. There's nobody in there at all. I kind of go, and I check. He said 2317, yeah. I look on the door again, that's the right one. I go, that's very odd. Why is he giving me the wrong office, you know? Okay, back to the lobby. Now it's like a little bit, it's now 5 past, and I'm kind of, wow, fucking after all this, I'm late. Go back down to the lobby, say to the very big man, hello, I went up to 2317, there's no one in there. And he went, yeah, they moved. And I went, oh, but when I asked you before, you didn't say that. He said, you didn't ask. And I went, okay. Where have they moved to? I'm not obliged to tell you that. And I went, oh, And I argue with him for a while, and eventually he gives me the address. He gives me this address, and it's like Washington Boulevard. And I said, is that close? And he goes, no, other side of L.A. And I went, right. Could you possibly call me a cab? And he went, no, not allowed to do that. At this point, there are no taxis, by the way, in Los Angeles, because everyone has a car. Now they have Uber, and it's been a big social revolution, and they drink a glass of wine once in a while. In those days, no one... Well, they did a lot of drugs, but they didn't drink. And there were no taxis. There were some. I found one, and it was driven by a Russian. And so I got in the car, and he says, where you want to go? And I gave him the address, Washington Boulevard. And he goes, where's that? And I went, I don't know. I just arrived. And he went, I have to look it up. So he gets the Thomas Guide out, and he's looking. And he goes, that's a long way. We've got to go on the freeway. So I went, okay. I'm thinking, how much money have I got and all the rest of it? So we drive for a long time. I'm now horribly late. No cell phones. I can't phone up and say I'm not coming, you know. So I just like, this is a disaster. This is a double disaster. This is card 27, you know. Eventually we arrive at the address, and it is a used car lot that seems to have gone out of business. I think, oh, God, you know. And I look around, and it's like, please, you know, God, you know, is there anybody else up there, you know? And so I said, I need to find a payphone. So we find a payphone, and I go through this farce of ringing up, and the voice says, please insert 25 cents. And I go, I have already inserted 25 cents. Please insert 25 cents. It's a recorded voice. You know, this goes on for a while. I go back to the cab driver. I borrow some money from him. This is how sad it is, you know. And eventually I ring the number I have for Atlantic Releasing. And I talked to my contact there, a guy called Bobby Rock. And I said, Bobby, I'm really sorry I'm late, but there's a real confusion. I went to the 9000 building. And he said, no, we moved. And I went, oh, no one told me. I said, where did you move to? He went, next door. It's the next building. And I went, okay. I said, well, I'm on Washington Boulevard. He said, well, why are you there? That's the other side of town. And I said, it's a long story. I'll tell you sometime. And he said, oh, don't worry anyway, your meeting's been cancelled. So I said, okay, I'll just go back to the Holiday Inn then, I suppose. So I said, cabby, can you take me to the Holiday Inn? I'll tell you where it is. I know where it is. So that was my first day in Los Angeles. So then what followed was I turn up at the office, and they give me somewhere to sit in a kind of pool area where all the secretaries are. And they say, I'm meeting this guy called Bill Tennant, who's a kind of Hollywood legend. Had run a studio formerly, had been a heroin addict, had been Roman Polanski's agent, had discovered the bodies in the Manson killings, had vanished from sight for like 5 years, and then he'd come back, and this was his new job. So he was kind of a bit of a character. I would see him come in, and I would hear through the wall as he shouted at people. I mean, so scary. He'd scream at people like they were making a film in Vietnam. And he screamed at some guy, "You speak Vietnamese?" The guy said, "No." He said, "I do. Fuck them, fuck you, and fuck me." And I was like, and they all laughed. And I went, oh my God, where am I? So I waited for 5 days for a meeting, and not once did anyone say hello to me or, Bobby Rock, my friend, would kind of like, "I'm really sorry, just they're really busy." I went, okay. I'd chat to the secretaries. I had no car, so I was just stuck there. So after 4 or 5 days, I got a message from Bobby saying, they still want to make the film, but they want to change this, and this, and they want to change. They don't want to shoot in September. They want to shoot next year. I went, but I've already got the DP, and I've organized everything. I said, I need to talk to Bill Tennant, So they put me through to Bill Tennant. He's in the next office. And I went, "Hi, sorry to bother you. It's Mike Figgis, and I just wanted to talk to you about the schedule." And he says, "What do you want to do? What do you want to talk about?" So I said, if you're going to move the schedule, it would have perhaps been courteous, as I'm just sitting next door, perhaps to ask me, rather than just send me a message through the wall that you're going to, I've been here for 5 days. And he basically told me to fuck myself, And I went, you know what? Fuck you too. You know, you are the rudest person I've ever met in life, and I don't give a fuck, so I'm leaving. So Bobby was there, and he just went, okay, you just, right? It's really nice meeting you. I'm so sorry about all this. So I picked my bag up, was about to leave, and then the secretary came to me and said, Mr. Tennant would like to see you. I went, oh, so finally I get a meeting. What is this to tell me to my face what he feels? So I was scared, actually, and I was also exhausted and disheartened, and I think my knees were knocking a little bit, you know. So, okay, whatever. You know, so I went in, knocked on the door, and come in. I walked in, and he was a kind of like, from a Scottish background, he was very skinny, wiry guy with a little moustache, receding hair, looked like a gangster, sounded like a gangster, had a voice like sandpaper, and he stood up and he started walking towards me, and it crossed my mind that he was going to like headbutt me or something, you know. And he came over, and at the last minute, he just embraced me in a bear hug and slapped my back, and he just went, you know, I sincerely apologize for our behavior. It's been disgusting. We've been very busy. It's not really an excuse. But I know you've just been sitting there politely, and this is unforgivable. We love your script, and we like you, we think, and we really want to make this film. And if the schedule doesn't suit you, we'll go with you. So can you forgive me? And I went, yes, I can. He then became my mentor and my best friend, and looked after me, looked out for me, introduced me to all kinds of interesting people, had the most amazing personal history, which he was by then in AA, and, you know, told me all about these scandals and this kind of the Hollywood scene and the whole cocaine thing, and he was amazing. He then moved to London, and we became very close friends. And then at some point he vanished. He has vanished off the face of the earth. And I really love this guy. And every year I Google his name, and what comes up is the Manson killings and the fact that he was Polanski's and Sharon's his agent, and about his previous history as a studio head and all the rest of it. I've contacted people that know him and knew him, and finally I got somebody who said, look, I think he got really sick and he wanted to go and die quietly in Lake Tahoe, but there's no obituary. I look him up on IMDb because those things are recorded. He's an amazing guy. He just vanished completely out of everybody's life. And I have to say, I miss him, you know. I assume he's dead, but I actually don't know. That was my last story. Yeah. Next time I'll give you the next episode. Thank you for listening.